Welcome back. You know the drill at this point. We're still going through the preview. We're going to take a look at some more Nurgle stuff because we're going to take a look at the Warhammer Quest Darkwater box. There are some great miniatures in here, absolutely fantastic. I think it's one of the strongest boxes they've done. I mean, this is like Cursed City levels of everything in here is class, so we're going to take a look at that. Now, of course, we take a look at a lot of miniatures on this channel, a lot of miniatures, but just because you want to expand your existing army or start a new one, that doesn't mean that you need to go straight to the source. You don't need to be paying full price for even boxed or new on sprue miniatures from Games Workshop. There are alternatives available, and chief among them at the moment is Miniswap. So Miniswap is a new site that's been created by hobbyists to provide a safe, secure and reliable way to buy second-hand miniatures and sell the miniatures that you no longer want. Whether they're still in the box, whether they're still on the sprue, or you've given them an amazing paint job, or really anywhere in between. And today we're just going to take a quick look at how this works. Using the filters on the site, you can decide whether you want to look for Blood Bowl, Horus Heresy, Age of Sigmar, 40k, whatever takes you fancy at the time, or whatever you're looking for specifically. To start with, let's take a look at 40k and let's see what's new in box. So we can see there's Assault Intercessors, Terminator Squads, both cheaper than if you were to buy them from Games Workshop themselves. If you're not fussed about them being new in box, you can also find stuff on the sprue. And I'm sure you will have noticed, just as I did, that there might be some gems hanging around here, like an old metal Bjorn the Fell-Handed. Now, of course, you might not want to assemble or paint anything yourself, in which case there are fully painted filters available, complete with various stages as to whether you want partially, fully, or fully pro-painted armies. Check out Miniswap using the link in the description and the pinned comment down below. Thank you very much to Miniswap for sponsoring the episode. Let's get back to it. For the box itself, you've got a bunch of miniatures, 49, all in plastic. Obviously, you've got your dice, you've got your tokens, you've got your various cards and counters, and you have a book of maps as opposed to like a bunch of different tiles and stuff. I've seen mixed opinions on that, right? On the one hand, the book is easier to store, so from that front, I kind of like it, but I do also think that having different tiles and different layouts, that kind of makes it a bit more immersive. Technically, the book is probably easier to produce, it's easier to ship, it's easier to store, but it's not quite as immersive as actually having those tiles to lay down, simply because you end up with a wider range of layouts, which you're not going to get from the book because everything is going to be the same size. I can see both sides of it. Personally, I quite like the book because I've, like, for D&D, one of the DMs in our little group has got a book of maps. We've used it a couple of times, and frankly, it's just super convenient. I love having a massive board, a big spread of buildings and a bunch of stuff. That's great, but also sometimes you don't necessarily need that to just have fun with the game, so I can see both sides of it. I like the book of maps, but the tiles also have strength, but that's what we've got this time round, which, you know, if you like it, great. I'm split. I'm split, it's fair to say. Now, I've already seen 4 of the heroes. We've seen Edmark Valoran, we've seen Bren Tillis, Inara Scion, and Drolf Ironhead, who still seems to be, like, the favourite for a lot of people. I've seen so many people, like, I mean, he's clearly the best one. He's also the most understated. I just find that super interesting that he is like a really, really popular one out of the ones revealed. I think it's fair to say that all of these miniatures look fantastic. They look great. I have to admit, I think I'm like Bren Tillis, I think, is my favourite, even if they did really not do a great job with painting her face. Technically, it's a good job. Technically, the paint job is really good, but it's too high contrast, and it makes weird shadows around her nose and mouth, which kind of throw things off a little bit. But the whole, the armour, the ragged cloak, just the whole vibe, love it. But we don't just have these 4 now, we've also got the other 3, because there's 7 heroes total in Darkwater. First up, we've got Kelthanor, the Forest Prince, great name. Also, we've got a centaur. I mean, you can't go wrong with a good centaur. A bit of a weird looking centaur. I think mostly horse, but there's definitely an odd thing going on with the tail. Maybe more deer. I think deer is probably more likely, isn't it? It's a cool looking model. I do like it a lot. The headdress looks great. The feathers look awesome. I really like the bow. The bow's cool. I like the fact you've got that armour plating across the front legs and across the midriff. That's pretty good. The hair as well. Quite like the hair. It's a decent looking model. We've also got Drasher Vaughn, who looks insane. That is a guy just fully turning into an owlbear. I don't know how else to phrase it. We've got the little circlet, we've got the antlers. The fangs are kind of alarming. I think he looks pretty decent. The wolf, kind of like the wolf pelt or bear pelt that he's got around the lower half there, looks great. He's a very fun miniature. I feel like there's a couple of the ones that have been shown off. This is someone's barbarian in D&D, regardless of whether they intend to play Darkwater or not. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. Look at the guy. He's also easily the widest of all of the heroes so far. He's got some absolute girth on him. Look at the size of that lad. I also quite like his weird claw scepter as well. That's quite fun. Decent looking miniature. And then finally we've got Jacobus Vine, the Jade Wizard. And, I mean, you don't really need to have the Jade Wizard in his title. That is one of the most wizardy wizards I've ever seen wizard, frankly. I mean, there is a good chunk of, like, druid there as well, but, I mean, the clothes, the cloak, the hood, the beard... The beard. That is every important wizard's beard that you've ever seen in your life. It's not a complaint. The guy is extremely trope heavy, but you know what? Sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes you don't need to step out of the bounds. Sometimes you just need a fantasy wizard that looks like a fantasy wizard, you know? I love his little owl companion and his odd plant dog friend. They're both really cool. Also, he's not standing on the floor, which is a fun touch. He's standing on roots summoned out of his staff. He does not want to sully his, for some reason, bare feet on the horrible ground, which is just a nice little touch. Also, the sort of sickle there, really like that. I like it a lot. Not actually that complicated a miniature, but just oozes, well, wizard. So Prince Kelthenor is a member of a nomadic clan that worships the hunter god Kurnoth, which was fairly obvious just looking at him. Drasha Vaughn is a chief of a tribe of shape-shifting warriors, which is also kind of obvious. And Jacobus Vine is a jade wizard dedicated to fighting against entropy and decay. He travels with a spite owl, great name, and a vulpine forest spirit he calls Whisper. I mean, they all look decent, don't they? Now, let's take a look at the Scions of the Plaguefather, starting with Gelgus Pust. I wasn't initially a fan of his shit-eating grin, but it's grown on me. It has grown on me. I actually quite like it now. Something I've noticed as well, he's got one of those kind of like circle, I don't know what to describe him as. I guess it's a wreath. Like above his head, in between the antlers, there's a wreath there. Now, something that I noticed when we were looking at the Age of Sigmar Nurgle stuff was that there are a few models with, like, wreaths there too. I think that is, like, becoming a new trend, or at least, like, a new signifier for Nurgle, for AOS at least. It feels like that motif has appeared several times. There was a Pestigor that had one, like, stitched into its stomach. I think there was a wreath on one of the Blight Kings as well. Like, it was something that cropped up a couple of times. I quite like it. It's very folk horror. It's a good addition, I think. The armour on Gelgus looks fantastic. Also, I mean, just Gelgus Pust, the Prince of Sores. It's just such a horrible name. Yeah, the armour looks great. The skin is horrible and cracked and covered in pustules. Again, we've got kind of a lack of extreme mutation here. There is obviously some. He's very bloated. He's got those big old like antlers coming out. But in the grand scheme of things, there's a lack of tentacles. There's a lack of weird gribbly bits kind of bursting out of the gut. In some ways, it's, again, a bit more reserved than we've seen from previous Nurgle releases, which I quite like. The weapons look great, absolutely horrible, just a big lump of metal in the form of that mace there, and then the greatsword having those faces trapped in it is a very nice touch. I think the stuff, like that collar, I can't tell if it's furs or if that is a growth out of his skin. Either way, I think it frames the head quite nicely. I really do like the cracked section of that armour where it's just split away. It's very, very cool. All around, I think actually a really good model. And yeah, the grin, I wasn't a fan. Now I quite like it. It's grown on me for sure. Next up, we have Belga the Cyst Witch, which is easily one of the worst titles that I've ever heard. The Cyst Witch? No, thank you. No, don't like that. Absolutely not. I mean, this is just a horrible freak, a horrible, messy freak. We've got a big, long, like, caterpillary sort of body. It seems like someone is growing out of her abdomen because there's, like, a figure under her dress that is stirring this horrible cauldron of goop. Also, the body itself has got these, like, fat arms sticking out to hold the cauldron in place. I mean, what a gross miniature. Absolutely horrible. And here's the thing, like, when I say that some of the stuff is, like, lacking in mutation, I feel like they've taken away just random mutations across the board and then just applied them in certain instances, but in an extreme way. So you've got this horrible Belga the Cyst Witch, which has just got a ton of awful stuff. We've got big horns growing from the side. Those horns are growing little, like, almost like little coral things, it looks like. There's something growing out of the spine. She has a weird caterpillar leeched body. Like, she is rammed with mutation, just not in the way that we might normally see it applied. I think it works super well. It's very effective. Also got a very classic, like, Nurgle staff there, which looks fantastic. It's not just those two, though. We've also got Mulgoth the Cleaver, which, super simple. Super simple model. Absolutely love it. The armour looks great. The chainmail looks great. The helmet is... oh, it's one of my absolute favourites, that helmet. And again, we've got these big antlers coming out, which look great. That arm, it's the same thing. Again, overall, the model isn't that mutated. Overall, you don't have a bunch of weird tentacles or, like, things growing out of shoulders. There's no gigantic spiky bits. But that is a colossal and horrible looking arm. I'm struggling to even work out what's going on. It looks super swollen, but also weirdly muscular. But it seems like there's a kind of odd carapace growing, either under the skin or, like, pushing through. It's really gross. The axe looks fantastic as well, and that is just such a good helmet. It just looks great. And you can see as well, like, looking at these, the same kind of ideas behind what we saw for the Age of Sigmar Nurgle reveals. It's the same across the board. It's the same for those and in Darkwater. It feels like a definite shift into something in a way a bit more reserved, but also still very, very grimdark for Nurgle in AOS as a whole. Finally, for your big bads, for your Scions, we've got Shaman Foulhoof. Looks decent. Holding a heart. Holding a heart, pretty much all you need to know. I do like the massive horns that are growing out of him. That's very cool. Also, the fact they're asymmetrical, I really like that. Missing an eye, it seems like. So that's bad news for him, but it does look good. And even with the other two more relatively normal-shaped Scions, at least, I'm not classing the Cyst Witch as being normal-shaped. She isn't. But the other two, this one, he does have a big old, like, bony spike growth out of one shoulder, which is a bit closer to the older stylings, I feel like, for the AOS Nurgle range. But it's not been overdone, and it's not all over the place. It's still maybe not as reserved as some of the other stuff they've shown off so far, but it's not quite as dominant as it has been in the past. I mean, it doesn't mess up the silhouette particularly. I do like the staff as well. The staff looks very rugged and primitive, almost. The pose is decent. This is a good-looking model. This is good. Now we need to take a look at the Cankerborn, because these guys are solid. I absolutely love these. They've got the kind of plague bearer heads, but in a horrible trio formation. I like the rocks that are growing out of them, or a bit like almost stuffed into them, it feels like. It's kind of difficult to tell. Either way, they look pretty gross. Apparently these guys are created when acts of violence are perpetrated against the land itself. So that's where they've got a bit more of that kind of earthy, ground-based, mutation-y stuff going on. I mean, you can see like the way the skin turns into almost like hanging kelp and stuff. They're very fun. They are very fun. I do like them a lot. Extremely chunky. The weapons look fantastic. Especially, I don't know what's going on with Games Workshop and axes at the moment. Especially like Nurgle axes, but it feels like they've absolutely honed into things that are just as brutal looking as possible. Little to no artistry, just it's a sharp lump of metal on the end of a stick. That's the kind of thing that I really like, and this is a really, really fun axe. The sword is just reminding me of Soul Calibur for some reason. Like, there's like one of the variant weapons from that game. I don't really know why I say that game. Isn't there like 8 of them now? I think I stopped at 4. But it's just given me that sort of feel. And, I mean, to be fair, it's just a big slab of metal with some odd growth in it. But yeah, that definitely, like, tickled that part of the brain. The hands are kind of fun, in that one of them seems to have more fingers on one hand than the other. Or indeed, less on one side as well. Just little random things that are slightly different. The fact you've got these kind of different horn and antler growths across the two, it's a nice touch. That stone sticking out of the stomach as well, super uncomfortable looking. Does not look great. Looks absolutely horrible, to be honest. They are some big, chunky, girthy lads. They look solid. Now, for those of you who are a little bit concerned about the direction that they took with the putrid Blight Kings, don't worry, because there are now Blight Templars as well. These actually feel closer to the design of the older putrid Blight Kings than the new ones do. It feels like they definitely made a conscious decision to shift things slightly. These guys look solid. They look great. I really, really like the top-heavy design of these, which makes sense because some of my favourite models that I've painted recently are these lads, which are from St. Decent on my mini factory, if you want to go and check those out. And there is just a very similar vibe going on with these Templars here. Bit more in the way of mutation going on. As you can see, we've got a little bit of tentacle action on 2 of them, actually. One holding the big, like, massive flail thing, and the other one with that big maul. They both look decent. For my money, they both look decent because they're not, like, massively overdone. That feels like a significant factor in how much I like what they've done there. The central guy there who's got this horrible gnarled tree growing out of his armour, or out of his spine most likely. There's a little bit of root poking out of the out of the gut there, which, again, really, really like that. The armour looks fantastic. I really like that armour. It is chunky, it's bloated. There's a hint of onion bro about it, which I quite enjoy. The helmets look fantastic. The asymmetric helmet where you've got the 3 like dots, the 3 little symbol of Nurgle across one eye but nothing on the other. Really, really like that. Also, things like one of them just has a glove over one of the hands. Little touches like that make it feel a bit more personalised. Absolutely love that. And then, of course, for those of you who were like, yeah, but I like the big hole in the gut thing. I mean, here you go. We've got a spiritual successor to the guy that's got a bell hanging in his abdomen right here. Except his intestines are spilling out and there's a bell attached to one of the strands of intestine instead, which I think is just way more horrible. Like, if we're talking awful mutations, if we're talking just gross things to have to live with, your guts permanently hanging out, that to me, that is way more effective, like visually, than here's a guy with a bell in his stomach, or here's a guy with a Nurgling poking out of his gut. There is an element of body horror on that guy that I just don't really get from the other 2, you know, from the old Putrid Blight King set. So, again, that's just me, but I really, really like the design on these. Again, the weapons look fantastic, and, oh, God, there's just something about this last round of reveals for Nurgle where they've just picked an aesthetic which is not dissimilar to what came before, but it feels like they've properly honed in on it, and they're like, this is what we want. This is what we're going to go for. We're going to strip back a few of the things that you may have been used to before, but we're going to bring everything in line together, and it just works. It just works so well. It's not just big lads in armour, though. We also have Pox-Wretches, which look fantastic. I really like the fact they've all been blinded. That sounds weird. Don't, take that out of context. In the context of these models, the fact they're all blinded is kind of fun. It's something a little bit different. It's very creepy. Very creepy, very weird. The swelling on the legs and stuff on some of them is really grim as well. I like that a lot. We do have a few repeated poses with customizable weapons, so it's not exactly the same. Exactly the same situation with Cursed City, where with the zombies you had just the same one twice, but it's not too obvious. I think it works okay. With the variety of weapons and the different weapon combinations, you can kind of hide it a little bit. And from a distance, I don't think it's going to really... I don't think it's really going to show that much. It's when you're, like, looking at them on a screen especially, and just staring at them, trying to make out every detail. Like, when I'm looking at the cloth and the different shields, when I'm looking at, like, which ones have got horrible swollen legs and bandages and stuff, that's when it starts to really, like, jump out. It's like, oh, yeah, there's only a certain number of actual bodies in here, but at a glance, when you're moving around the table, I don't think it'll make any difference. But they do look decent. They do look good. Horrible, horrible way to go through life, but hey, they signed up for it. They probably didn't sign up for it. Actually, did they sign up for it? Let's find out. Yeah, they're Nurgle worshippers, so they signed up for it. It's their own fault. Also, I love the fact that the masks are for a purpose. They rob them of sight, instead using their sense of smell and taste to hunt down those not enhanced by Nurgle's fecund gifts. That's fun. That's a fun thing. But wait, there's more Pestigors. As if you hadn't seen enough Pestigors on Monday, it's all Pestigors all the time. And to be fair, these are different from the ones that we've already seen. Obviously, the design is extremely similar, but we don't have as much in the way of, I don't know, horrible gaps in the abdomen or weird issues with faces hanging off. These are a bit more standard, if you can really have standard Nurgle Pestigors. I like the armour again, looks really good. The weapons are suitably brutal and horrible. The shields have got some really nice designs. I mean, you just can't go wrong with some good old Pestigors, you know? You just can't go wrong. I especially like the lad with the big sickle. The big old half-moon scythe there. He looks great. And when I'd said that, you know, there's a lack of, or like less faces hanging off, his face is completely missing. That's just a skull. So maybe take that comment with like some advisement. Now, the repeated poses on these are a little bit more worrying because I'm looking at the different layouts of the bodies and the heads, and yeah, there's a couple that really, really stand out. So the guy with the shield held above his head, I mean, he's got the same head twice, which is very, very obvious, and it makes that repeated pose like a bit too clear for my liking. And I thought to myself, well, if that's just something that they've done by accident, then, you know, maybe it's not actually going to be a problem because you can just swap out the heads, right? But there's another two heads that are absolutely the same as well. So the guy's holding a shield and one of them's got a hammer, the other one's got like an axe thing. They've got exactly the same head and they've got exactly the same pose, which is a little bit worrying. Like, that's a little bit concerning. The guys holding their weapons above their heads, again, the only difference in those heads really seems to be... Oh no, those are two distinct ones. Weird choices there to do direct replicas. I'm not sure whether that's intentional or whether those build options for those specific Pestigor bodies means you can only have the heads with the horns coming out of the nose. Because if that's the case, that does make it way more obvious, and I'm not a fan of that. Now, finally, on the miniatures front, we've got Mire Kelpies, and these are just cute little guys. They're just cute little guys. Cute, horrible, somewhat haunting little guys. We've got some proper skull action going on. We've got a horse skull, we've got like a deer skull, awful pitted antlers as though the bone's been eaten away by something, and then all drippy nonsense and leaves. I really like them. They're not really what Kelpies traditionally are, but hey, they look cool, they're kind of fun, they're a little bit cute. I'm on board. All on board for the Mire Kelpies. So there you go, those are the lads out of the Warhammer Quest Darkwater box. Once again, Nurgle coming out with just insanely good sculpts. I feel like this slightly shifted direction is working super well. The miniatures look fantastic. They are very much to my personal taste, I have to say. And it makes it so much more tempting to pick them up because they just feel, for me, a bit more cohesive. But again, that's just my opinion. Thank you very much to Miniswap for sponsoring today's episode. Check them out in the link in the description and in the pinned comment down below. Let me know what you thought of that lot in the comments down below, and I will see you for the next one.